All right, everybody, welcome once again to more activity here at Circuit of the Americas. Excited about this one. It's the second round of the Porsche supported and Pirelli supported Pirelli GT3 Cup Trophy USA this weekend, presented by Discount Tire. Looking forward to race number 2. And you can see the cars starting to make their move into pit lane, getting ready for the basically gridding up and then doing their pace and parade laps. We might see a couple of parade laps here as the track's still a little bit damp. Lots of rain overnight, but the rain has been very, very light as of late. However, the track's still a little bit damp and it tends to hold a little bit of moisture, so odds are we are going to see a little bit of an opportunity here for these guys maybe to get an extra lap and get those Pirelli P0 rain tires, or if they have elected to be brave and put on a couple of slicks on those cars, on a couple of the cars, and maybe wait for this and hope the rain stays away, dries out, and see what they have at the end of it. Well, that might just be an opportunity here for some of the guys maybe who didn't get the results they wanted in the morning qualifying session, which happened a bit earlier and happened in very wet conditions. So we'll have to see just how that unfolds. On the pole, and again, there are two different categories here. There's the Diamond category for the 2014 and 2015 Porsche GT3 Cup cars. It's the new 991 platform machinery. And then from 2013 down to 2010, you have the Platinum cars, and that's the 996 platform, or 997 platform, excuse me. And that's just for the somewhat older cars. However, we have seen a couple of guys here this weekend in these Platinum cars. They are still very effective weapons and have been able to put up some great times. Will Hardiman, who won the race in a romp yesterday. I mean, at one point we were talking about him putting on a clinic, and really it was a doctor's thesis by the time it all ended. He just disappeared in the number 19, and that is the WPD More Speed car. Just a spectacular run. Fred Pordad ended up with a second place qualifying effort, and he of course drives the WMS Affinity machine. That is the number 20. It's that beautiful all black car that was so strong yesterday. In third, the number 84 of Jesse Menser, who had a very strong run in race 1 yesterday as well. Very solid run in the Distech Storage Centric machine. Fourth is Mike Zwiebeck. That is the number 2 car. He was a little bit further down the order yesterday in that number 2, but during qualifying this morning really put in a great lap and ends up in fourth. And completing the top 5 is the fastest of the Platinum category cars. That is the 0 of Fred Keimer in the slightly older chassis, but boy, did he get a run out of it. He did yesterday in the race as well. The ATX Autosport number 0. In the 6th spot on the grid, Oscar Arroyo, and he too, he faded a little bit early yesterday, then came back with a vengeance and looked very, very strong right at the end of things. So looking forward to a good run from him for Oscar in his number 89. Then taking a look at the next qualifying spot, second in the Platinum category is the number 22. That's Mark Yano. And Mark, a very experienced driver in these Platinum cars. 7th on the grid overall, but 2nd in Platinum. Then 8th on the grid overall and a Diamond category car, the number 49 of Alessandro Ciochetti. In the 9th spot on the grid overall, 3rd in Platinum, number 77, Seth Davidow. And rounding out the top 10, 4th in Platinum, the number 23 of Mark Nelson, racing for the Racers Group. Next up, 11th on the grid overall, 4th in Platinum, is the Trefethen Winery Porsche of John Trefethen. Then 12th on the grid, Diamond category car, the number 3 of Steve Goldman, the Discount Tire Porsche. 13th on the grid, number 11, another Platinum car, Anand Sharma, driving for the Chaser Clothing Company Porsche team. Then 14th is 08, a Platinum car, and that is John Scarlett, and he had a good run well on the SharkSavers.org machine in qualifying this morning, and it's much wetter than it was, or than it is now this morning. And then rounding out your top 15, the 43 of Albert Salvo, he too in a Platinum category car, and he is driving the Miracle Sealants machine. Going down the order just to complete the lineup. In 16th, the Platinum car, the number 65 of Ray Shahi. 17th, the 81 of Jim Slavic, Platinum car. 18th, the number 12 of Ranson Webster, a Platinum machine. 19th, the number 18 of Mike McAllister in a Diamond category car. Didn't get the qualifying run he wanted in that Competition Motorsports Porsche this morning. And rounding out the field in 20th to 13th of Jason Godfrey, a platinum car, and great to have him with us in the Semper Fi Funds entry. Greg Franz joining me once again from Competent Motorsports, the promoter and organizer of this series championship, and we are just about to go green. Pace car is in. These guys confident, opted to just go with the one pace lap, said we're ready to go racing. And they've got the windshield wipers on. It's a real light rain out there right now, but a lot of this is just more a visibility issue. Watching for that flag to fly. Starter waiting, and waved him off. No start. So whether they wanted it or not, they're getting another a pace lap here, Greg.
Well, it's Greg, as we discussed prior, it's again, this is part of the education. This is all part of a race strategy, learning what you do in these kind of conditions.
Well, and that's part of the game, isn't it? I mean, yesterday it was chilly, but it was dry. And now today, I mean, it was a wash in qualifying this morning, so they got that experience. And this can often be even trickier conditions. It's not that wet, and it's drying in spots. Other spots you get offline, it's going to be even damper, and you try and make a pass, you move offline. I mean, the education curve is kind of straight up now, isn't it?
Well, this is where you really can't get away with a lot of movement in the cockpit. You have to be very deliberate. And because, as you said, given the conditions yesterday versus today, there could be a whole lot of trouble if you didn't handle it correctly.
Absolutely. And we've actually had a couple of changes now, I noticed, in the qualifying line. It looks like Mark Yano in that session this morning, all that experience that he has in these cars in those wet conditions, he actually threw down a lap in qualifying. That was good for third on the grid. Hardiman in that all-white Porsche right there, which says Texas Size Storage Center, the big Texas on it, the great story there for WPD. Then on the outside of him is the zero of Keimer. You see, he's got a 0 on one part and a 23 on the other, but then there's Yano. And boy, Yano ended up in the race yesterday, came up to finish 7th overall, and ended up 2nd in the Platinum class, and he's looking to do better than that today.
Yes, and it was interesting after the races yesterday to speak to a number of the Diamond drivers who had moved up from actually the Platinum class of last year.
Right.
And their comments as to finally getting a chance to race these 991 Cup cars, and they're very, very pleased with the way they handled, and we're looking forward to today.
Boy, so are we, and again, we'll bring him around this time. And doing the pace setting is Will Hardiman, who had that great run yesterday. I just commented here about it. We talked about, yesterday, we thought it was a clinic. It turned out to be a doctoral thesis. He just stomped them, but this is a whole different story here in these conditions, isn't it? I mean, Fred Keimer in this qualifying session was only 0.3 off of Hardiman, and I mean, you look at the fast laps in the race yesterday, Hardiman was almost 2.5 seconds clear. So these conditions, they call it the great equalizer for a reason, don't they, Greg?
Yep, and one of the again, what we discovered with the tire management yesterday, and certainly going through a 40-minute race, you have to show up at the end of the race as strong as you did in the beginning.
Yeah, and you can oftentimes, if it's really wet, it's easier to manage the tires because you're just not taking much out of them. But what people don't understand sometimes, when you have a rain tire on a car, one of the ways you have to get grip in that tire, you still need heat. So it's a very soft rubber compound that gets the heat, that gives you the grip once the water's channeled out and gets you down to the pavement. If it starts to dry, you can start to just root those tires in a big hurry, can't you?
Yes, and you find many times in a lot of races in the rain, you'll see drivers diving over to the side to see where that water is, to try to keep as much wet on them as possible.
Yep, cool them down. Sometimes that's exactly what you need to do. Well, let's see if we get the green flag this time. Hardiman in that white Porsche leads him around. On his right is Fred Keimer, that great qualifying effort in these wet conditions. And watching for that green flag to fly, see if it does this time. Just on the bottom of that Circuit of the Americas crossover board. And here it is. We are green. And boy, a big lunge early by Jesse Mentzer, who was very aggressive early yesterday. And he's going to try it again and see what he can get done. Hardiman protecting down to the inside. You can see the two of Mike Zwiebeck in the Discount Tire car trying to make a big move there. And he actually moves up from fifth into fourth. And it looks as though it was Marciano who got really shuffled back, third all the way to sixth, Greg.
Yeah, and that was, again, maybe carrying a little bit too much speed into that first turn.
Well, it's tricky enough in the dry, and then you get it damp, and the braking areas and out flattens out. And the adjusting on the pedals you have to do. Easy to lock up in these conditions, and when you do lock up, there's no steering input, so then you have to come off the brake, and it's all a matter of, at that point, just salvaging anything you can. And again, Hardiman showing some real smarts heading up in there, just feinted left a little bit, protected, and did a nice job getting out of that corner. But there's the guy who got the launch, the 84 Menser. He looked good yesterday. He looks better today.
Yeah, I think they all did a little learning on this, got a little bit more seat time on the track, which in the dry and the wet, certainly helping them now.
But you know that Fred Keimer in that Platinum car is going to be ultra aggressive. He senses an opportunity here. I mean, he had a pretty solid run. He showed some early speed yesterday. Ended up, I think he had qualified third yesterday, faded to fifth during the race. But in these conditions, that car might just be an even more effective weapon. He's there in second, Menser third. But everybody, as we saw yesterday, chasing Hardiman, and then that black and silver number 2 of Mike Zwiebeck. And let's see who was able to move up. Looks like it was the 49 of Chiachetti, coming up from 7th on the grid, now into 5th.
Well, as strong as Fred was yesterday, and again, he's a Platinum car.
Right.
And he ended up in the top of the podium for the Platinum class yesterday afternoon.
And you can sometimes see here when you have one of the Platinum cars running in close concert with one of the Diamond cars. Obviously, I've talked about Diamond cars, just a newer chassis, the 2014-15. What's the differences between the two chassis in terms of performance, power, etc.?
Well, there actually has a wider stance on the car. They moved it about 1.5 inches out. It's longer, a little bit longer wheelbase. The aero package is a little bit different, which I think significantly helps. There's also a new paddle system that's in the 2015 car. So they're a combination of some technological advancements, and certainly, as Porsche always does, looks for the safety of the driver.
Oh, without a doubt. Any big, significant changes in terms of the engine department?
Not really.
Not much.
No.
Yeah. Oops, problem there. That's the number 89, suddenly off pace just a little bit, Oscar Arroyo. And let's see if he's able to, he's able to get it gathered up and is back at speed, but we're going to see a little bit of that slipping and sliding and the like here today. One of the things that you talk about, that wider stance, longer wheelbase, and better aero, I mean, the car is just more stable as a result of all that. But I sometimes, people may not recognize sometimes what, in terms of just time, that paddle shift can do. Because it's a no-lift shift, right? So you can shift anywhere you want, and you're just that little. And you think about it, if you shift and get a tenth of an improvement in every corner on this track, that's half a second here with 20 corners. So it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's what the new drivers are finding out with the Diamond car, is to have that available to them now that they've never had before, and it's working well.
Very, very close in the lap times right now. As you can see, Hardiman, very different story than what we saw yesterday, where he just sort of disappeared into the distance. Not so much now. And, that means that obviously Keimer and Mentz are doing a superb job, because Hardiman right now, he's got great visibility out there. Everybody behind him is driving in that spray, and these guys are just not giving him any quarter right now.
No, and I think that's what they're looking for, is to say, let's stay close, and hopefully on the racing line will clean up a little bit, dry up a little bit, so that those last couple laps we can put everything into it, make whatever move we need to.
Right. And after Yano had that great third place qualifying effort, then slid back all the way to the 7th spot, he has gone back around Trefethen in that black number 99. So Yano in that circuit racing number 22 has himself now back up into 6th, but he's still got some work to do to get up to where he qualified.
Just see how deliberate the drivers are coming in and rolling back out of the turns here, just because of the conditions. And you have to really, as a driver, be able to shift your strategy and your whole thought process on that. Oh,
without a doubt. Now, do these cars run ABS?
No.
So you're literally, normally you're doing the trail braking into the corner and the whole thing. In the wet, you almost have to abandon that, because you need your braking done in a straight line, don't you?
Right. And with one of the feedback on the 991 is that it is neutralized. Spoke about it a little bit yesterday, that the car is much more neutral for the drivers, much more accommodating from that standpoint. So this is a whole new opportunity for them because they've never driven the wet before with these cars.
Yeah, and you're talking about neutralizing that. It's that big engine, all that mass overhanging the rear wheels, and these cars have always been very competitive. Earlier versions of this, not the easiest car to drive because of that big pendulum swing of the mass behind you. You say these new ones, they've neutralized that out through just refinement on the chassis suspensions and the like. Yeah, you're right. A lot of the drivers say, boy, you barely notice it's got that big mass back.
That's right.
Whoops, and that is Fred Portad going around the number 20. And Fred had worked his way up into the 8th spot. He'd qualified there, slipped back a spot, moved back into 8th, and now had this big spin. And looks like he's, maybe at this point just trying to kind of reset things and get going after it again. Here's another look at it, Greg. Ooh,
yeah.
Boy, he had some help there, and that was a pretty substantial tag. John Scarlett got into him, so not both of them are damaged.
Well, we remember seeing these two together, Oscar Arroyo and Fred Portad yesterday.
Take a look. You can see the damage to Scarlett's car, although it's still running, which tells you a little bit about how sturdy these Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars are.
People will see, contact and think that's going to take them out of the race, and yet so many of these drivers are able to finish a race and finish it strong with having some body movement on the car and also on the suspension.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are sturdy, but boy, this group of 4 just continue to be covered by very small margins. Hardiman does have the fastest race lap at a 2:34.2, but Keimer right there at a 2:34.4. I mean, they are in very close company. Look there at the number 13 of Jason Godfrey in that Semper Fi Funds machine. He had a troubled day yesterday, but is definitely looking a little bit stronger today. And then there's the damage to the 08 there of Scarlett, that right front corner. And one of the concerns that you have sometime with these cars is the fact that the radiators are up in each of the front corners, just in front of those tires. A little bit susceptible sometimes, and that was a pretty good clock, but it looks like that time the radiator was able to survive that hit.
Yeah, as you said, Greg, that's something you always need to be aware of because that transfers, unfortunately, back to engine temperatures. And
biggie, yeah. There's a loop again by the number 89 of Oscar Arroyo. He's having some issues at this stage. That's the second time I think he's gone around and gathered it up again. One of the nice things about this facility, of course, Greg, is you can see it here, a ton of runoff. So if you do get it wrong, usually there's that paved runoff area. You just slow down, gather it up, and get going again. So you get the opportunity. You can have incidents at this track without it turning into full course cautions.
Yes, and it still tests the driver's skill to go
yeah.
ahead and stay within those lines.
Looks now like Hardiman drawing away just a little bit, and I don't know that he's drawing away really from Jesse Menser. I think Menser has just closed up big time on the back of Fred Keimer at this point.
I think.
And I mean, that's basically it. That I think Keimer in that orange car has just slipped back a little bit, and Menser closing in. But here's the deal: Menser gets closer, that wash in his face. You try and get a draft so you can make a pass down at the end of the straight. Closer you get to that guy in front of you, harder it is to see.
Yeah, I think Jesse's probably just biding a little time here until he can try to make a move, and at the same time then go after Will up in the front.
Yeah, very early when I was starting driving, guy taught me a lesson. He was a Formula car driver, and he said, Greg, he said, the middle of the front straight here at Brainerd, he said, there's a seam, and in the wet it fills with water. Put your tires right on top of that thing when somebody's behind you, and it just throws out a gallon of water at them per second. And I went, well, that's mean. And then I, of course, did it immediately in my first rain race. But that's, visibility in these conditions is really the biggest issue.
Yes, and and again, you can't, you can't train for that one.
Yeah.
It's the conditions dictated, and you can go do a track day and nobody's going to throw water at your windshield to practice
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. It's a learned deal, and the best line in the rain is not always even close to the one sometimes that you run in the dry. It all depends on how polished that groove is.
That's right. And with these conditions, These guys are trying to keep those tires that we talked about wet, but still up to temp, so they do have the grip they need to be able to make these turns.
And it looks like that rain may have picked up again just a little bit. It's not as heavy as it was, but it's definitely heavier than it was when this race started at this point. So that's a bit of a difference. Look there at the 65, Ray Shai having himself a good run, and right behind him, I think, is the 20 of Poor Dad. And again, he's trying to, it's right in front of him is the 20 of Poor Dad, trying to come back up through the pack, and then right behind him sits the number 11. That's Anard Sharma, who's come from way, way back. Good run for Anard, up now into the top 15.
Yeah, he's gained a lot of confidence being here, obviously, yesterday, and, that's kind of the nice part of what the drivers are doing is they're taking an inventory of how they performed yesterday. Let me take the points that I was strong in and implement them today.
Yep. And then obviously I would think at the same point where I was weak, have a chat with a guy, a Craig Stanton, and say, okay, now how can I deal with this? Because this is where I'm losing a lot of time.
Exactly right, Craig. You take care and take advantage of all the resources you've got available to you.
And you guys make lots of them available in terms of the driver coaching and education, and that is very special indeed to be able to have that resource. There's the 43, Albert Salvo, who has worked his way right into the top 10. Really good run for Albert. He had qualified 9th, slipped back just a smidge, and now has fought his way right back into the top 10, and he's driving one of those platinum machines, and that's pretty impressive because that, by my recollection, you're looking at, he's 4th in platinum right now and having a very good run.
I think the 3 cars in a row there with Mark Nelson, the number 23 car behind him. I think Seth, the 77 car, is all 3 of them right together having their own races. Mentioned before, there's racing going on all over this track with these groups.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a scrap for the 10th position, and they're fighting just as hard as these guys are up here. Hardiman resets quick lap at a 2:34.227, but Keimer not off of him by that much, but you can see that it's just enough. You lose a 10th or 2 every lap, and pretty soon you're staring at a deficit of a second, and that's exactly where Fred sits right now. Perhaps a more concern for Fred right now is looking in his mirrors and seeing that number 84 of Jesse Menser. Now, Fred is comfortably in the lead in the platinum class, but there's something to be said for the psychological advantage you get and the confidence from being up and mixing it up with the leaders of a higher class, and Fred just doesn't want to let that one go too easy.
No, not at all, and that brings a tremendous amount of satisfaction at the end of the day if you can be able to do it. And hopefully what Jesse is looking forward to is expecting if Fred keeps looking in that mirror, there'll be an opportunity there.
At a certain point, if Jesse's really hounding Fred and Fred's finding that, boy, I'm really starting to get my lines messed up and I'm looking at me, at that point, he isn't in the same class. The smart move is just let him go. And then just get your, slow down, get refocused and go.
Exactly. Yeah, because as you said, there's some satisfaction to being second overall, but by the same token, take the class win and keep yourself in the race and drive a good, clean race.
Absolutely, and Menser just continues to be absolutely relentless in the pressure he's putting on. Here's that long run down that back straight, turn 11 down to 12. Fairly undulating back there, and there's even a little bit of a bend in it, as you can see, a couple of bends, but it is just absolutely a flat-out blast. So, what kind of speeds would you think that they, in the dry, it'd obviously be a little bit quicker, but they're carrying a pretty prodigious head of speed down to that brake zone.
Well, you look at these lap times, and we're probably a good 15, 16 seconds off of what we saw yesterday. But I'll tell you that's not a bad thing. It's them driving intelligently, which you certainly want to see.
Well, you got to drive within the limits. And the physics, it's simple as that. The physics change when the track is wet and the grip goes down, and you have to make that adjustment. We were talking about trail braking, and for people who may not be real familiar with that, trail braking is, at a certain point when you're at top speed, you can hammer the brakes if you don't have ABS really hard. But if you maintain that pressure, you're going to lock up. So you have to trail off of the brake to keep the maximum braking working for you, but still be able to not lock up and be able to turn the car. And boy, you get that wrong when it's wet, and it's a fun ride.
Well, that's where, having the ability, and that's one of the nice things about, again, the technology that Porsche puts in the Cup cars, is having that brake bias so you can adjust as conditions change, as tires change. You're able to make those adjustments that allow you to maximize your braking opportunities without flat spotting a tire and getting yourself in trouble with your tires.
And that trail braking concept, we were talking about how it applies to the wet. You almost have to abandon it because your big moment here is 43. That salvo ran way wide, and that allowed Nelson to knife through underneath it. We've got a new second overall. Jesse Menser has taken that spot away from Keimer, and he had just been relentless. Jesse had, and I think Keimer realized maybe, if he really makes the move, just let him slide through and then just tuck in behind.
Yes.
Sometimes it's, what's the old art of war or whatever? Run away and live to fight another day. And sometimes you just let the guy through. Again, when we're not talking about a class battle, just an overall battle, that's a smart thing. But no, look at Fred going, I'm not done yet.
He goes, I'll give that opportunity to you, but if you make a mistake and open that door, I'm going to come through again.
Yeah, and they've got now that group has opened up about 2.5 seconds from third. Menser back to fourth. Zwiebeck, he's got another 5 seconds in hand back to Chiacchetti. And here's a look at that pass. Boy, he squared up and went right around the outside of him.
Nice play, and you know that for the last couple of laps that you mentioned earlier, Greg, Jesse set that one up.
Yep. Looked here, looked there, said, where is he weak? Where can I maybe take some advantage? And if you can get that pass done in the S's and you get the guy you're passing offline a little bit, it's real easy, as the old adage goes, to get behind in your steering there in those S's. And once you are offline at one point, unless you get rid of all of that speed and momentum, get back online, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Either way, it's not good, because you're either going to be really slow at the exit of the S's or slow in the middle when you gather it up again. Oh, we got a good battle shaping up here as well. That's the number 18. That's Mike McAllister. Is that the 81?
Yeah, Jim Slavic.
Yeah, those two guys having a solid run here. And Slavic, you can see on the side of that car, that's the Zorro Tools machine, having a good run. And the 18 able to get through. Or McAllister, obviously, in that Zorro Tools entry. And Slavic, boy, those two guys, once he got through, boy, he just cleared him, didn't he?
Well, that, again, is another platinum car with Slavic and a diamond car with McAllister. And, again, new driver in the diamond car.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of education going on this weekend with these diamond car drivers.
And just the wet thrown on top of it, so that we talked about that learning curve being virtually upright at this stage. But that's the whole process here, and that's something that this series really focuses on. We've talked about that a little bit, but when you step up from club racing, from whatever it might be, into a pro series, there's no reason, and all too often you see it happen. It's like, well, I'm racing pro now. I don't really need any more assistance. And oh yeah, you do.
Yep.
And even the pros, it's amazing. You hear some awfully top flight pros have a driver coach because it's a different perspective scenario. And well, once again, we've seen a couple of moments here by Arroyo. Once he gets settled down, he's quick again and goes right back around the outside of Anard Sharma. Arroyo, he's pushing hard enough that he's spinning a couple of times, but when he gathers it up, he's got speed.
Well, and I had the opportunity to speak to Oscar yesterday afternoon after that race, and he was beating himself up because of that spin he did with when Pordat was able to pass him. But I think he's collected himself, and he's ready to have a new day here.
Well, he certainly is going after it, and he's pushing hard, and you have to appreciate that. By the way, pushing hard up front, the 19 of Will Hardiman is now set fast lap down at a 2:30.7. But then you've got this battle, and Menser got around Keimer, but he hasn't been able to shake him.
Now that's again where some local knowledge with Fred here from the Austin area that does make a difference.
Oh, without a doubt. This is a track that local track knowledge will pay big dividends. And folks, when you see those two cars together, as we take a look now at our leader, the car of Menser is the diamond car, the newer chassis. As we talked about, Keimer's car is a platinum car. And when they're close together, look at the fronts and look at the backs, and you can see the differences that here we come. There's Menser's car. You can see that Keimer's car is a little narrower, not quite as aggressive. The different wing approach on the back of the car, and then when you look, I mean, you can see. Look at that wing.
Yes.
On that lead car. That's a lot more cord space on there, isn't it?
And people don't realize it's not just the entire size of the wing, because that's not where the downforce is coming from.
Right. Lots of other things. The work in the front of the car, how it's channeling air. I mean, everything about it is key. How much adjustment do they have now on those rear wings to be able to change the downforce?
They have the flexibility. That's open for them, so they can change within the parameters of what the cars are all raced as delivered from Porsche. So what is available to you on the wings is what Porsche has in fact put in there for terms of limit of adjustment. You certainly can do that.
So I mean, in essence, if it's the right kind of track for it, you could flatten it out a little bit, try and trim off some of that downforce, and a big big high downforce track, just crank it in. And then you've got the splitter. Not a lot of little dive planes on the front of these cars, but it still makes pretty good stick on the front.
Yes, and as we talked about the fact that the feedback on the 991 Cup car has been that helps that equalization concern that people have had with 996, 997 Cup cars.
Yeah, and it's always been an issue with just this layout. You tend to have push into the corner, and then you get snap oversteer on the exit when that big pendulum starts to swing. Ooh, look at Keimer wanting to come back very, very close down there, and not quite able to get the pass done. But Menser has absolutely not one moment to relax here as they are working through it. Zwiebeck still sits 4th overall, 3rd in Diamond, and Marciano has fought his way back up into 5th overall, 2nd in Platinum. He's having a great day.
I'll tell you what, even though we started with a little bit of wet, these guys are out there competing, and I think they've got a pretty good understanding of what they can do on different parts of the track, and I think we're starting to see some of that show up right now.
Well, I mean, early in a race, when the track's damp, you go out and, I mean, literally, you explore a little bit. Where is the grip? Where can I run this car? What's going to be fast? Once you find it, then you can just start executing that line. And, on the one hand, obviously, there are times, we just wish the rain would stop completely. We get a dry line back. But the problem is that you get that dry line on the racing line, then you try and make a pass offline, and you're right into the wet, and your tires aren't ready for that. So in a way, maybe this isn't the worst thing, that it's staying really predictable now, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah, and that, like you said, is an advantage to the drivers, because I think they have that sense of it and can plan accordingly. When you have rain, you can have it come down, and by the end of the race, it's dry. Those are not the fun times.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking here again at the number 18 of McAllister, and couldn't quite pick out that number right behind him at this point. Well, now we check out. Here's the number 13, and that's Jason Godfrey. Got himself a good run going. He's worked his way up into the 12th spot at this stage, and he ended up had a fairly troubled race yesterday and was way, way, way at the back. So he's making amends. He's coming after. Is that Fred Pourdad?
That's Fred, yeah.
Yeah, he's having a great run at this point. Fred has slipped back to the 13th spot right now. And Fred, of course, was one of the guys who yesterday was right up near the sharp end of things. So he's fighting some sort of an issue there. Take a look here and see what kind of times. Well, Fred just made a change, got himself up into the 12th spot. His last lap was a 2:35.3. And that's got him now a little bit quicker than the guys that he's back and racing with. It's going to get tougher now because everybody in front of him now is running low 2:35s or quicker. So now these passes for Fred are going to suddenly it gets just a little tougher to execute.
This is where they really start counting.
Oh, big. Yeah, that's exactly right. And now we got Ray Shihey right here. That's beautiful. Number 65, the Sterling Collision car. And just got to love that color scheme on that. Very elegant on that machine. Also one of the platinum cars.
It's interesting, Ray. Ray, if you notice, taking a look at that livery, they're big fans of the University of UCLA.
Oh, sure. Yep, it's got that exact color scheme, doesn't it, now that you mention it? And there's the number 11. That's Anand Sharma, another platinum car. Those two guys right now are battling for the 15th spot. We move up now. I think this is Alessandro Chiocchetti, and Alessandro's sitting in the 7 spot, but Mark Nelson, and that's a platinum car in the number 23 in Nelson, and a diamond car for Chiocchetti. So these two guys are duking it out for a 7th spot right now where Chiocchetti resides.
Yeah, Mark running with TRG is, again, after speaking to him yesterday afternoon, was not happy with himself when he spun out, and was definitely committed to have a clean race. And he certainly looks like he's working on that right now.
Yeah, he's put one together. By the way, those 3 cars we're seeing there, Seth David out on that last lap ran a lap that was half a second quicker than either of these 2 guys. So if that pattern continues, that should become a pretty good 3-car battle for that 7th spot. Do keep in mind that Chiacchetti's running a diamond car. Nelson and Davidow, the 23 and the 77, are running platinum cars. But Davidow is wheeling that machine around right now to great speed.
Greg, as you commented earlier, you can pick out any place in this race and you've got action going on.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about this type of a series where it's a quote-unquote spec series where you're running, basically cars built to the same spec, just minor adjustments and the like. Nelson making his own adjustment here for position, trying to get through. But you generally, and he does, and that's what we were talking about right there. He got Chiocchetti offline a little bit, and the only way you save it is slow down, isn't it?
That's right. And he was able, like you said, coming out of that turn, roll back on the throttle, is able to carry it forward now. We'll see if he's able to retain that.
Well, speaking of that, look at this. We have a replay here of some action, and that was the pass that Menser put on to take that 2nd spot away. Now Keimer is continuing to fight. He is all over the back of Menser. Boy, these 2 guys, this has been, since the green flag, these guys hooked up, and it's been just this fierce.
Lap after lap, it almost looked like we were looking at the same shot a couple of different times.
Absolutely, and it doesn't matter which one's in front. They just can't shake the other one, and that's what keeps it so entertaining here. And again, you got to give it up. In these conditions, you'd think that slightly wider, longer, everything would make that car a little bit better, which means that Keimer is just driving brilliantly right now.
Yeah, and of course, Fred has a couple of years' experience in that platinum car, where Jesse just moved up to the diamond car. So this again is his first race in the 991 GT3 Cup.
Oh boy, he really turned in early there, didn't he? Had to pinch that back down. Let's see if Keimer was able to get a little bit of a run. Not too much. I thought with the way that Jesse had to just sort of slow it down to not go spearing off the track. But now look at Keimer. He's trying to swing it out, and he's going to use that open line. Comes right around the outside. Does he keep it on the track? Keeps the momentum alive. He's through, and he's done it. Boy, that was brilliant.
Great move.
Yeah,
great move.
Menser went to defend, and Keimer just said, well, then we'll do it around the outside if we have to, and made it work. Now into these tricky S's, and Menser's just going to look and go, all right, I got by him once. Stay close, figure it out, and see what you can do again. Great stuff. Love these sequence of corners here. There's 2 different sections of S's. Then here you make this really, really, really tight turn number 8. Oh, and here's another look at it from the outside. Look at that, Greg.
Oh, boy. Very clean.
Ooh, yeah.
Very clean.
Yeah. And then he let him know. He went, I'm going to make sure you know I'm coming across here. And make sure. And really, that was just to blunt any kind of counter move that Menser was thinking of making, and it was effective.
Yes, and I'll tell you the other part that you've got to appreciate, certainly from a series standpoint, is the fact that you're seeing very good car control, the situational awareness of both drivers knowing where each one was. You see clean, hard racing, and that's what we enjoy seeing.
Oh, and that's huge, isn't it? I mean, you really, I like that. You said situational awareness and just track awareness, knowing what's around you, what the conditions are, so you recognize if something changes and you can react to it without it literally spooking you, essentially, because that's when mistakes happen. And it looks like they're coming up on the back of the 18 of McAllister, so we'll see whether coming up and lapping another car, McAllister, brilliant job there, just slowed down, got off line, let them both go through, didn't affect that battle at all. That's a class act.
That's part of what really the kind of the sociability thing I've mentioned before. the drivers get a chance to know each other in the paddock, and as they race, we have in the back of the cars on the livery, it lets the driver behind know what class that car is in. So from the back end, you can know, okay, that might be a platinum car, or that's a diamond car, and you will address your strategy accordingly then.
And the other side of things that we need to talk about, and it gives us an opportunity to give a plug to some awfully dedicated people, the corner workers from the Sports Car Club of America, especially on a day like today. It's been a wash pretty much all day. They're out there on those corners, and they provide not just assistance to a driver when he goes off track or whatever, but they also provide huge information, whether it's directed through them from race control or just what they judge to be information that these drivers need. A big one's that blue flag.
Yes.
And if that's part I would assume of the coaching that Craig Stanton and his crew have that you put together, is to understand those flags and understand that these corner workers know what they're talking about. And if a big blue's flying at you, you probably got somebody steaming up at you pretty quick behind. And all it technically means is check your mirrors.
Well, it's interesting you bring that point up. One of the exercises Craig gave these drivers yesterday was at the end of our drivers meeting.
Mm-hmm.
He went around and told the drivers, at the end of this drivers meeting, I'm going to ask you, where are the corner workers on the track? And it was inside the track, outside the track, and that's a great exercise that not enough drivers take advantage of.
I agree completely, and it's a marvelous opportunity if you really follow what those flaggers are doing. It helps you with your racecraft, and so to be able to understand that's a pretty good deal. Again, looking at this battle, that's Chiachetti, but it looks like Davidow did get around Salvo and is now, or is that? No, that's not. I think that might be.
Did he get around 23?
I think he did. I think Chiachetti was able to get back around Nelson. That's what we're seeing here. Oh, there's Nelson. So that is, Chiachetti and Davidow. And boy, these guys have just been, at one point, one's in front of the trio, and then it's just cycling around. So they're having a lot of fun out there. And you just find people that run at your relatively similar pace, and you get into these great battles with them. And you get out of the car and you finish 8th, and you got a huge smile on your face because you've just been passing and repassing all race long. And sure, everybody wants to get out there and win, but you guys with this series, you put a lot of emphasis in the Pirelli GT3 Cup Trophy USA series. Put a lot of emphasis on it being a joy.
Yes,
because racing should be fun.
Well, I mean, it really gives an opportunity to come out on a race weekend and really have a full opportunity to enjoy your sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's a misnomer to call it a hobby.
Yep, but yeah, you're right. Anand Sharma, who had worked his way up pretty smartly there, and then just ran a little wide up there into one. And that's that part of the track we're talking about. You get up there and you don't come off the brake when it flattens out and it's wet. You're just skating, and that's one of those areas where there's a lot of runoff. You just, all right, blew that, gather it up and go. But it'll frustrate you. That's where this sport's similar to golf.
Yeah.
It has moments when you just want to take that steering wheel off and throw it into a pond.
Well, you just can't. You can't lull yourself into conditions on the track.
Yep.
It requires your total attention for the entire race.
Focus.
Yes.
You better be focused on these, because when you're running at 160 miles an hour down that back, things come at you quickly.
Very quickly.
And there is your leader once again. Not seeing a whole lot of him. He isn't opening up the margin like he did yesterday, because he won by some 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And today he's got it up to about 9 seconds at this stage. So still a pretty impressive run for sure. And I think he's being smart. These conditions, you don't have to be absolutely flat out. If you've got the pace in hand, just find that comfort zone drive. And if you're clicking off laps half second quicker every lap, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, you've got what, maybe 5 minutes left, so like you said, drive directly, cleanly, just keep it tidy, as they say.
And we talk about it with this series, you've got the young guns that are coming up trying to make a name, and you've got the more experienced drivers, or the drivers that started late that are very good. I get the feeling, though, if this guy wanted to, if Will Hardiman wanted to, he could step up into some serious pro stuff. I mean, he certainly looks to have that ability. Whether he's got the money, the motivation, the interest, that's different.
Right.
But he's got the skills.
No, there's no question, and that's certainly was demonstrated today, and it's certainly showing well again today also.
And coming up on the back of Oscar Arroyo, who's had an eventful race.
Yes, he has.
At this stage. When he hasn't had an issue, he's shown some good pace. But you know what, that's part of it too. I mean, I don't remember who it was. A famous driver once said, the best way to find the limit is to exceed it.
Yeah.
And Arroyo's pushed. He's gone after it a little bit here. And that's part of that learning curve.
Well, and as you said, to be able to go ahead and knowing that turn that you did 2 turns ago is not the next turn. So you need to be able to go ahead and mentally be able to be focused back on what's in front of you and what's down the road, not what was behind you.
Exactly. And the really good drivers, the ones that like a Hardiman, it looks like here, the drivers that have that gift, if you will, are the ones that they just have that ability to feel, okay, the track's drying, there's more grip, but the tires have gone off a little bit, but I'm lighter because I don't have the fuel on the car. Be able to, your butt somehow calculates all that, and you figure out, okay, now we're going to be able to make something happen here. Speaking of something happening here, that's the 65 of Ray Shai. We've talked about that absolutely beautiful machine, that platinum car, and he's coming after and putting Jim Slavic a lap down. So again, he's had a solid run. Ray has been right up in now in that 15th spot, staying in that up position and driving away from some of the other guys here, having a good run. Speaking of eventful races, there's the 08, and you see that damage on that car for Scarlett. But boy, he's running. It hasn't upset him at all in terms of the pace and performance, has it?
Well, that's one of the other things that I think many times drivers go, well, gee, the car's not perfect. Yet the crews will tell them, drive what you got.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all you can do, and you'll make the adjustments. And I tell you, again, that is a learning opportunity there.
It is, and we've got Albert Salva. That's that white number 43 right behind him. So this is now the battle for the 10th spot. And taking a look here and seeing what we've got for lap times, Scarlett definitely running a little bit quicker on that last lap. But we'll see how that plays out. 5 spots in front of them, or behind them, excuse me, is the 65 of Ray Shai.
Ray, yesterday, we haven't had the opportunity to speak much about it today, but in our Platinum class, we have a Masters class that is having their own championship. They declare that they're going to, and these basically are drivers that have the requirement to be at least 50 years old. And Ray was able to, in fact, in the last lap of yesterday's race, pass Jim Slavic to go ahead and get his first podium.
Good for him.
And he was very excited and did a heck of a good job to make that one happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the experience and treachery overcomes youth and exuberance, right?
That's right.
We just had a good look there at that orange machine of Mark Yano as the white flag comes out on our final lap. And Yano, who had that great qualifying run up to third, but remember he dropped out of that top 5 by a bit, has fought his way back into 5th. That puts him second in platinum. But again, anybody who's running a platinum car and is up into that top 5 is doing a superb job. And everybody wants to be looking at the data traces of this guy, Will Hardiman.
I'm sure. The interesting part is we noticed both today and yesterday is these cars are pretty well bunched together. Mm-hmm. And if you do make a mistake, it will cost you. You will lose a couple of positions for sure.
Without a doubt. I think Yano in traffic may have made a big move here. I thought I saw Menser behind him. I don't know whether maybe Menser had a moment and dropped back. There's Hardiman in that WP. I love that, a Texas size parts store. Everything's bigger in Texas. And he is just driving superbly here in news. Last time through this sequence of switchbacks and now into one of the great corner sequences in North America. Certainly this triple apex right-hander, 16, 17, 18, falls down the hill, building speed, great complex.
The whole track here at Circuit of the Americas is really a opportunity for all drivers to experience a lot of the iconic road tracks in the world.
It is. All the inspiration from the other tracks. And Hardiman using every bit of that inspiration to bring this beautiful machine around and pick up his second consecutive overall and diamond category win. And, when it's your hometown track, that's how you want that to play. Oh, and this is as close as it could get. And Yano, he was around Menser, and Menser was able to get back around him. And that second, and there's Keimer. So those two guys. And on the last lap, Menser, a 2:30.185, fastest lap of the race on the final lap to sneak back around Keimer. Wow, fantastic bit of driving there by Jesse Menser late in the going, and kept that margin to Hardiman right at that 10-second mark. So just doing that is an achievement, and then getting that fast lap, that's spectacular.
Look at that. We've got a newcomer in regards to the podium on the with the Diamond class, Michael Sabak.
Yeah, great job by him.
Came back, very consistent. Mark with Fred up in front is going to be look about second on the podium, and then Mark Nelson in the 23 car had that race that gets him on the podium also, the Platinum, and then. With the Platinum Masters, looks like we've got John Trefethen up on the top step again, and I think we've got David and should be John Scarlett, Chip, and also I think probably Ray Sheedy again.
Boy, and I'll tell you, Trefethen also setting his personal best on that last lap at a 2:32.9, and that's very impressive in these conditions in that Trefethen Family Winery. Number 99, but the day once again belongs to Will Hardiman at number 19, WPD, more speed. Look at that, flashing the lights. And, that's a nice thank you to those corner workers and the fans who have come out in this. When you flash those lights, you're acknowledging their presence. And look at this moment. That was what I was seeing. It wasn't Yano, it was Keimer, and that over-under move back and forth. And at this point, Menser was able to stay with it and just squeak through. But, that was the second to the last lap. Those guys were racing that hard. It's spectacular.
And you see going through those S's like that, the 991 was able to hold their line and really be able to come back onto the throttle and was able to get past and hold his position on Fred.
Absolutely. And, we talk about aero grip from the downforce on these cars, but that wider stance is mechanical grip. And in wet conditions, that's equally important. And then it had to be driven well, and boy, did Menser do that on that last lap. Taking back and securing second overall and setting the fastest lap of the race in the process, great job. But for Yano and Keimer, those two guys in that top five in Platinum cars, with Keimer's third overall and Yano fifth, just great drives in those older chassis, and proving that those older chassis are anything but obsolete.
Again, another really exciting, clean race for the most part, and I think all the drivers are going to be very happy to see down there. Everybody's real pleased with the way this one's turning out.
Yeah, when it's a wet, gloomy day like this, the thing that makes that all bearable is being on the podium. And boy, did they do a great job here for this Pirelli GT3 Cup Trophy USA, presented by Discount Tire. Second round of the championship. Where's your next stop on the schedule so fans can come out and watch?
Well, we'll be our next stop will be actually back east in Mid-Ohio.
And that, of course, one of the great sports car tracks as well. So you go from strength to strength, and these drivers will be looking forward to tackling another of the great venues at Mid-Ohio. But we're now done here at Circuit of the Americas. And again, the Pirelli GT3 Cup Trophy USA, presented by Discount Tire, putting on a fabulous round of racing here in round 2 of the 2015 championship. Greg Franz, thank you so much. I'm Greg Creamer. It's been a treat, everybody. Thanks.